I'll give everybody just a minute or two to roll in. I'm seeing the attendee numbers go up. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get us started. Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining. Welcome to our third annual Field Inclusive Week. We're excited for you to meet our panelists momentarily. My name is Reagan McGuinn. I use she, they pronouns, and I'm an organizer for the NC Conservation Network, where I work to raise awareness of various environmental and public health issues here in North Carolina. Just so you're aware, today's webinar will be recorded and recordings will be posted to our YouTube channel throughout the week. So be sure you follow us there for easy access to these recordings again. Be sure you also tune in for the entirety of this webinar to be entered to win a private birding trip with an expert instructor courtesy of Golden Gate Bird Alliance and valued at $800. One winner will be announced at the end. Shortly, I will introduce our panelists, but first, Field Inclusive would like to recognize and give special thanks to our sponsors of Field Inclusive Week 2025, the Nature Conservancy NC chapter, the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences, Advanced Geo Partnership, the North Carolina chapter, the Sierra Club, and 5 individual sponsors. Thank you for coming on board as our sponsors for FI Week this year and for being dedicated to promoting and supporting a more inclusive outdoors. It is through organizations like yours and the many individuals who donate to support Field Inclusive's mission that we can continue our goals in raising awareness when it comes to social field safety issues by hosting events like Field Inclusive Week, as well as providing financial support to our panelists, speakers, and marginalized and historically excluded individuals who professionally work outdoors. Now, without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce our panelists for today's discussion. Kiedon Bryant is a PhD student at Texas A&M University who studies the evolution of complex behavioral phenotypes using darters as a model system. He was the recipient of Field Inclusive's 2024 Summer Travel Award sponsored by Tracy Aviary. Hannah Clipp is a postdoctoral researcher with the USDA Forest Service Northern Research Station who studies the impacts of climate change on birds and forest pests. She was the recipient of Field Inclusive's 2024 Fall Travel Award, sponsored by Wilson Ornithological Society. Deandra Jones is a PhD student in wildlife conservation and management at the University of Arizona School of Natural Resources and Environment, who studies the black bear population within the Navajo Nation. She was a recipient of Field Inclusive's 2024 Fall Travel Award, sponsored by Conservation Nation. My-Lan Lei is a graduate student at the University of Colorado, Denver, and the Denver Botanic Gardens, who collects data on the Avery Peak twin pod, a rare plant only found in certain alpine regions of Colorado. She was one of Field Inclusive's recipients of a 2024 Field Inclusive Research Grant, sponsored by the Wake Audubon Society. Cheyenne Reuben-Thomas is a PhD student in ecology and evolutionary biology at Cornell University, who investigates the potential benefit of good fire, traditional uses of prescribed burning, on ground-dwelling insect biodiversity in prairies on the Oneida Nation and oak woodlands in Yurok Territory. She was the recipient of Field Inclusive's 2024 Field Inclusive Research Grant, sponsored by the Wake Audubon Society. And finally, Killian Yevtyeyev is an undergraduate biology major at The Ohio State University and was the recipient of the 2024 Field Inclusive Cape Fear Bird Observatory Joint Fellowship, sponsored by Cape Fear Bird Observatory and the Wilson Ornithological Society. During this summer fellowship, they helped with the painted bunting banding on public and private properties and assisted with establishing a point count and banding study on 6 sites from Wilmington to Sunset Beach. Unfortunately, Narayan Kumar, one of our 2024 Research Award recipients, is unable to join us today. But Narayan is a PhD student in the Civil and Environments Engineering Department of University of Delaware with the Coastal Engineering Program, who studies coastal erosion caused by extreme climate change. He was a recipient of Field Inclusive's 2024 Field Inclusive Research Grant, sponsored by the Southeast Climate Adaptation Science Center. A huge welcome and special thanks to all of our panelists today for agreeing to share their time and experiences with our audience members. This discussion will be a round robin style, so I'll introduce a question and I'll give all of our panelists time to answer. Audience members, please feel free to submit a question for our panelists for the Q&A portion, which will be towards the end of the webinar today. So I have some questions that I'll ask them, but I'm excited to share y'all's questions with them as well. So the first question I will pose is this. Each of you do really interesting work, and it would be great to learn about what initially drew you to your field. Please, if you have one, could you share a specific spark moment that made you realize this was the path you wanted to pursue and how that moment influenced your journey? And I'll get us started with Hannah, and if you just want to pass it on to whoever's ready to answer next.
Sure, thanks for that, Reagan. So for my spark moment, ever since childhood, I was interested in animals and wildlife. And so I decided to major in wildlife biology when I did my undergrad. But in the summer of 2014, which was between my sophomore and junior years of college, I specifically participated in a research experiences for undergraduates program at Kansas State University. And that's where I first conducted a bird research project and was working closely with a PhD student. So it's kind of my first exposure to undergraduate research and graduate school tangentially. And so through this experience, I discovered actually my spark birds, grassland songbirds, which got me both into birding and bird research. And so it also set me kind of on the path to graduate school by giving me a research experience as an undergraduate, exposing me to graduate school and seeing kind of what that path entailed. And then feeling like that was the path that I would like to pursue as well. So I guess can pass it on to the next person.
I suppose I will go next. So, I always had an interest in birds when I was young. Being an ornithologist was in fact my dream job, just from daydreaming. And my spark bird was parakeets. We raised families of them when we were younger. And as I was continuing my education, I was pushed into areas of research and science that didn't particularly fascinate me, but it was a point for a stable career. So I began pursuing microbiology at the beginning of my college career, and I did not enjoy it. But it was still science, so I continued on that path. And what changed my career towards this path is that I took an ornithology class for my GE for my undergraduate studies, and it rekindled my love for birds. I learned how to bird properly and identify them in the field and in the lab, and I got a lot more experience knowing what ornithologists do in the field. So my professor was very knowledgeable with banding. She did that for a grad study, so I was very interested in that. And it was at one point when we were out in the field where I was like, I could simply do this forever. I would be content with doing this for the rest of my career. And later I collaborated with that same professor to secure this opportunity to band painted buntings in North Carolina, and I have not regretted it ever since. And I will now pass it on to the next person.
I can go next. So yeah, so I think like a lot of us here maybe is like, I've always had this love for animals too, just like growing up. And I know always wanted to do some like work with animals in some way, but like a lot of people I wanted to be a vet. And just as I got older, that was really not something I wanted to do. And I realized it was, just not the animals themselves that I cared about, but it was also like the places they lived and like the ecosystems that made it possible for them. And one thing that I noticed or spark in that the moment was, growing up, we spent our summers in the mountains, the Chiska Mountains, and we took our livestock up there. And back then, I the ponds and lakes always had water. Like there was always water. And just like over the last 10, 15 years, I've watched some of these ponds dry up and just like some of it disappearing entirely over the summer. And just seeing that change is like really heartbreaking because like in our culture, a lot of um, nature is tied to, Navajo culture, to our identity. And then just like losing this really feels like we're losing a part of who we are. So that's kind of where I started, was just really wanting to protect these places, not just for animals and the plants, but, just to kind of keep that connection that we have with them. But with that, I'll pass it on to, I think, Cheyenne, you wanted to go.
Yeah, yeah, so for me, I think it's more of a spark experience. So yeah, I of course grew up loving animals or more than human relations. And I discovered that I loved working with insects after getting my first job out of my undergraduate uh, career. And so that was working with USDA, and I was working on invasive species programs, and I just loved it. But that wasn't really my spark experience. I started grad school, and I applied to and was invited to this workshop in 2021. It's an Indigenous-led genomics workshop. It's called Sing Canada, the Summer Internship for Indigenous Peoples in Genomics. And the theme that year was Land Back. And so it really became like this spark for me after really realizing I'm surrounded by these Indigenous scientists doing this work to help, or this relational work that, kind of um, aligns Indigenous science and Western science. And so for me, I think that was really how I realized that I could do that in my own work by including my own academic and cultural interests as well. So I've been really lucky to be surrounded by such strong Indigenous folks in community, of course, and also in academia ever since then. And that includes these really wonderful, strong Indigenous women that are doing really great work in Indigenous phytoecologies, which I started getting really interested in the last few years. So yeah, I just ended up finding it really my current graduate path, and I just found a creative way to combine my love for insects, genomics, phytoecology, and Indigenous science into my own research. So yeah, I'll pass it on to whoever's ready.
I guess I can go now. I would say that like a lot of other people have said, I think I was like very interested in working with animals, also that I might want to be a vet. But like community, also kind of like what Cheyenne was saying, has really helped me feel like I could stay in the field. Because like even going to college when I kind of already knew that I didn't want to be a vet, but I didn't really know where else I could work with wildlife. I heard like another student behind me talking about like the classes that she was in, and I asked her about it, and she encouraged me to join like our local student chapter of the Wildlife Society. And through that and like interacting with so many other students who always wanted to share about like their knowledge and different experiences and what they were up to and what we could also be a part of, uh, that really helped me get into this field. And then I'd also say that like well, my first love with birds, I ended up taking a field botany class that was required of me in my senior year and discovered that I also really loved that. So that has helped influence me to do the work that I do now with rare plant species. But yeah.
Okay, so I guess I'm last. Yeah, so just like everyone else, like I had like a love for animals when I was a kid. I was probably a little more biased towards fish because like those were like the only pets my mom would let me have. And then probably like, yeah, I think when I got to undergrad, first couple of years, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And then in spring of 2021, which is like in the middle of my junior year, I had joined like an undergraduate research lab that studied pair bonding and cortisol synchrony in convex cichlids, which are like these really cool fish native to like Central America. And honestly, I just really love like that whole experience, getting to like be a part of like the research process from like start to finish. And like that experience like really was like a pretty much like a launching pad for me. I ended up getting like a first author publication like as an undergrad, which is like really cool. And it really helped me get into grad school and figure out what I wanted to do. And now I'm doing like really cool research using genomics to like interpret behaviors now. So
Amazing. It always makes my heart so full to hear everybody's like moment that it clicked for them, that they're in the right place. And I'm sure it hits home. It hits home for me and for a lot of, I'm sure a lot of our viewers. So thank you all for sharing. I have a question next about adaptability and resilience. It's kind of a multi-part, so I'll ask a little bit now and ask a little bit later. So, as we all know, field work can be quite demanding and unpredictable. So I'd like for you each to share if you have anything that comes to mind about any challenges that you've encountered in your field work or research due to your identity or background. And in what ways have you adapted or sought out support to overcome or resist these challenges? And I'll get Cheyenne to share first.
Yeah, so my current field work is actually, it occurs in pretty remote locations. So I'm pretty lucky right now to say that I haven't really experienced any significant issues regarding my identity or background during field work on its own. However, I think fieldwork planning presented some challenges in its own way, like regarding typical insect collection practices, some being not necessarily against, but not really aligned with Haudenosaunee views or values. So, you know, we have a value, a wampum, one dish, one spoon, and that's, you know, one example from that is not collecting too much. And I was doing pitfall trap sampling all summer. So that presented its own challenges, as well as you know, not including, or of course I included, but this isn't thought about. Thanksgiving protocols aren't thought about in typical fieldwork practices. So mostly so that's to answer the first question. Mostly, honestly, I think also there's been a lot of systemic barriers, which have made this kind of work pretty much impossible to do in the past, especially to be led by Indigenous researchers such as myself. So I think that was one of the largest challenges, I guess, to overcome. So yeah, I won't answer the next question yet. So whoever's ready.
I am all right with oh, did someone else unmute?
You can go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm very sorry. But yeah, I am the same in the sense that I thankfully did not encounter very many struggles in terms of my identity as a trans man. Everyone on the who I worked with was incredibly respectful and accommodating towards my identity, and I could not have asked for a better team than the people that I was with, and I'm very grateful for that. But I would say the biggest struggle was just the fact that this was my very first field experience, fellowship. Previously, I had worked in a biochemistry lab, so that's you're inside in a windowless laboratory, and it's I would say quite the polar opposite of what field work is, which is you're in most of the times remote wilderness for 8 hours a day. And I would say that I prefer field work a lot more, but it was the physical struggle that got to me. I being out in the field is extremely physically taxing, and I would say that I was a little bit unprepared for that. But yeah, it took a lot of strength and um accommodation from my side to know my own limits when in the field, and to know when to call quits when my body is not keeping up. But by the end of the field, by the end of the experience, I was keeping up with everyone else, and thankfully that is the most of my concerns. And I will pass it on to Deidre, since she wanted to go as well.
Thank you. Yeah, so I was gonna like when I was thinking about this question too, it's like, fieldwork is definitely demanding and like full of surprises. But when I think of this question, there's one thing that I'm like continually facing, or it's still a challenge even now, because working with certain wildlife or certain animals in Navajo culture, you're not supposed to do. Like you're supposed to leave them alone. And with me, like working with black bears has definitely brought up some of these unique challenges that you don't really think about, just because of that cultural background. And in my culture, like black bears are seen as sacred. So it's considered taboo or scary to like interact with these animals, as it is believed that interaction with these animals can cause sickness or mental health issues down the road. Um, so then because of that, like, it's a challenge of its own that, a lot of people don't really think about, or I guess don't really see as a challenge. But because of that, it's just like, I've had to approach the way I do my research in certain ways that just kind of respect these beliefs. So yeah, it's really interesting just trying to find that balance. That, just trying to stay true to kind of my upbringing, but also while doing research that is needed nowadays. But yeah, I'll answer the second question after I pass it along.
I don't mind going next. I think something as like a whole that I've noticed as someone who didn't grow up doing a lot of like stereotypically outdoorsy things is that there are a lot of skills that are expected of most entry-level fieldwork jobs that I think a lot of students, even if they've done field research as an undergraduate, may have not experienced. Like, not all labs say have you driving like a four-wheel drive truck or, like building fences, those kinds of like physical and like skills that can make one feel maybe a little bit nervous about either doing that work or coming across as uh, like really super inexperienced. And I think for myself, like while it was scary, it was still helpful to ask people like questions because most of those people would assume then that you're taking the job seriously instead of just seeing what happens, And I mean, like everyone makes mistakes and you have to learn certain things. Like it's not always going to go perfectly, but I also find that asking around, like just asking your general community, like whether it's your coworkers or like just other people that can be helpful too. Like I think I sometimes found it a bit intimidating to navigate back from places. Like if a land manager just like takes you out somewhere and then is like, okay, like I've shown you where to go and now like find your way back, like, or you'll come back out here tomorrow, right? Or something like that. Um, like we have tools now, like you can set a track on an app like Gaia GPS or something, and then you can have that and it can just like make you feel a little bit more safe and secure in these like new environments in these remote or rural places, wherever they may be. But yeah. I'll pass it on to whoever is ready next.
Yeah, I can kind of continue like kind of the theme where I think like in general your first fieldwork experience comes with a lot of very steep learning curves. Especially when you come from a background that isn't like outdoors person. So like personally, I had a very like suburban upbringing. My family didn't hunt or camp or fish or hike. So I didn't really have, I'd never been camping. I had been hiking, but not like backpacking, not intense field experiences. And so even just like figuring out and like finding appropriate field gear in terms of like boots or field pants, or binoculars, figuring that all of that out, I think, for the very first time is a very challenging experience. Um, and then another challenge that is kind of more identity based, which ultimately didn't end up being an issue. But I had to do for my PhD fieldwork in remote West Virginia during the start of the COVID pandemic, which was an interesting time. Certain people were calling COVID the China virus, and then I'm going out very visibly Chinese American, and I was like, what is this going to bring in remote West Virginia, which is not a blue state, we'll say. Um, but it did ultimately not end up being an issue, but it was something that was very much in like the forefront of my mind, planning for the field season and then going out the first, few weeks and kind of figuring out what the lay of the land was there. So that was just something, that was very present in my mind at that time.
Okay. So I really haven't faced too many challenges out in the field. I think mainly because like during my first like trips out in the field, like I had lab members that were like super experienced and everything. And the work we do is not too intense. Like mostly we just go on the creeks and kick around rocks to look for fish. It's not, that bad. Just I'll probably like, encountering like challenges with the weather or like having to adapt really quickly because like for like our work we use like live animals, so you have to go out, collect them as quickly as you can and get them back to the lab without them like perishing on the way back. Um, but yeah, I haven't had like too many. I haven't really had like any like really challenging experiences like out in the field because of my personal identity. Like, yeah, you do run into like locals every now and then who are like, oh, like why are these people in my creek or whatever? But when they see that like, oh, we're from like a major university or whatever, like they like get really curious and like, oh yeah, so what are you guys looking for? But then I have like had like other research experiences where wasn't totally treated like the best, and a lot of times it felt like people kind of like questioned my ability, like being from like an underrepresented group. But I don't know, like my experiences doing fieldwork have been like pretty great. So
Okay. Thank you all for sharing. I'm going to go back to that part of that question, which is in what ways have you adapted or sought out support to overcome or resist these challenges? And I'm going to build on that just a little bit. With how do you balance the emotional and physical demands of fieldwork with the need to advocate for equity and inclusivity in your field? So, I guess a broader approach to that is just how do you work to overcome these challenges, and how do you do that in a way that's healthy and good for you? And Kiedon, not to go back to back, but I'd love for you to get us started.
okay. So I mean, for one, like right now as I'm doing my PhD, like I have like a super supportive like graduate advisor. I mean, like she's like the most supportive like PI I ever could have asked for. Like she's like a second mom to me, honestly. And she's like super understanding of like the challenges that like I may face or what my other lab members from many like diverse groups might face as well. And then overall my lab itself is like super supportive too. And then like also probably like I had got a therapist too, like my first like year here, because I mean honestly like in grad school you're gonna need one anyways. But yeah, just say like just go out and seek help or try to build like a strong like support system, honestly.
I can go I think that's cool. I something that I've really thought about over the years as like a technician and then a crew leader and then graduate student is that it's also important to like look for work when possible that clearly prioritizes safety. Often, people don't necessarily talk about emotional well-being unless it's in the context of like, oh, how do you deal with conflict with a crew or something like that. But like a workplace research group that really like is open and transparent and clearly prioritizes safety. I feel like when I have worked with such organizations or employers, like I've just generally had a much better experience. And then to kind of like bring it back to like why and we're all here with Field Inclusive, I think as I started like being in more of a leadership position in the field and really was concerned about making sure that like the physical and emotional well-being of my crewmates or technicians was good. I just like really tried to watch to see like how they were kind of doing just like doing in the field and like asking questions, but trying not to be like overbearing, but really like trying not to emphasize this idea of like pushing ourselves to the absolute limit. Like that isn't like the best thing that one can do, that it's like, no survey is like worth our like safety or well-being. And just then like, yeah, really looking for those resources to try to best like support everyone. And also like what we kind of what Kiedon had mentioned, like not acting as if everyone knows everything already, but also not like just assuming some like one particular person in the group like has less knowledge. So I would try to provide like the undergraduate assistants I worked with this summer like a document about like all the field gear, like literally like every single thing they might bring out with them, and then little notes, and that they could like leave comments or ask me questions either on the document or personally, just to make sure they didn't feel like the onus of kind of all that discovery and like research was on them, especially since like all of us have knowledge to share.
Okay, I can go next. So for me, for the challenges that were presented, particularly in the context of aligning my Haudenosaunee values to my fieldwork, I did what everyone else should do, is consult my elders and my community members to determine the best practices for my own research regarding these specific things that really didn't align with my values. And so after we kind of collaborated on that protocol, I reviewed this with my advisor, and my advisor has been a pretty great rock in my PhD experience thus far. So she's been very supportive of me involving community members throughout the entire research process. Which also helps uphold Indigenous data sovereignty, which I can talk about in a little bit. Yeah, I think having my incredibly supportive advisor is really what helped me to overcome these challenges. And also my community back at home, who has been nothing but gracious with their knowledge sharing and collaboration in this research. And I guess for like the systemic barriers I mentioned, this is also kind of where my advisor plays a large role as well. And so she really allows me to have this creative freedom with my research. And so without that, this work really wouldn't be possible. So as far as kind of the additional question in overcoming these challenges or advocating for certain things in a healthy way. And, fieldwork for me this summer was really, really demanding, and it's been a particularly challenging year. 2024 was anyway. So it was, I didn't realize how much it would take out of me. But I'm really glad that I spent time with community while I was up in Yurok in California and back at home at Oneida Nation. Because, without doing, extracurriculars like going to community festivals, making new friends in the community, it wouldn't have been such a it would have been a daunting experience without that. So I think that's something that everyone should be able to, or should kind of prioritize in their own work as well, especially the graduate student. We need to prioritize our well-being in these trying times. But yeah. So whoever's ready to answer as well.
I can go next. So a lot of people already talked about just advocating for yourself in the field for when it gets extremely physically strenuous. And I totally agree with that because I had to learn the hard lesson of needing to do that quite often with myself. And you always got to remind yourself that most of the time when you're out in the field, you're not out there alone for a very good reason. Your colleagues will know what they're doing, and it is okay to rely on them for help if you need it. You learn a lot from them. I learned a lot about myself and what I would like to be doing, just like in terms of community work from my colleagues. I wouldn't have been able to participate in public banding demonstrations or public educational events without them. And I actually discovered that I quite enjoy demonstrating to people how bird banding works and why we do it. And another thing is that I feel like while it's good to, know your limits, one thing that helped me overcome a lot of my challenges is just throwing myself into the passion of my work because I loved it. You're out there and you're among nature and you band birds and do the research that you want, and the days are extremely physically demanding, but once it's over, you only really have a feeling of satisfaction left. And um, I would just say that it's all about finding a balance between those two, um, like pursuing your passion in your off time, whether it be birding or demonstrations or talking to other people, while also relying on, the people around you and connecting with them to learn more about your career and more about yourself. And yeah, that's about it for me.
I guess I would mostly echo the thoughts of everyone else. I think it's really important to rely on support, like personal support from your mentor or your PI, from your graduate student cohort or lab members. I know I went, to other grad students with questions about fieldwork, and challenges, and consulted, sought out their opinions, and I think the answers I got from fellow graduate students who have been through it before and knew what they were doing really helped.
I guess I'll end with kind of the way I've navigated some of these challenges too. And I really like how everybody's talking about, having that support system because it's really important. Having the way I navigate some of these challenges is, I always thank my advisors because when I tell them something, like this isn't aligned with the way I grew up or the way we do things, they're very understanding and they be like, do whatever feels comfortable for you. So when I started my project, it was just, I didn't have like a good feeling about directly interacting with bears. And, I told them that. And they were like, well, we could do non-invasive methods like hair snares and trail cameras to kind of estimate the population. So that's kind of the way we went. But then also I just kind of found ways also to incorporate my cultural practices into the research that I do. So for example, I always give a moment before I collect the bear hair samples because they're like on bob wire. So we go out there and collect the hair. I always give a moment to give thanks and gratitude by offering a prayer in Navajo or offering a prayer in Navajo and then as well as offering corn pollen. And this is just, me explaining my intentions to the bears in a respectful way and just acknowledging their importance in our culture. And then also getting ceremonies done because, I'm in a way directly interacting with these bears. It's just, creating some imbalance in some way. So it's just really about restoring that harmony and just trying to keep things in balance. But again, like support system is such a big thing.
And y'all make my job so easy because my next question was going to be about support systems and your mentors. So this was absolutely the perfect segue. So a lot of you already kind of mentioned this a little bit, but I'd love to know what qualities you think are most important in a mentor, particularly in fields that involve significant field work. I'm sure that now is a great time for you to brag on your mentors, but you know, if anything comes to mind, I'd love to hear, and I'd love to start with Deandra. Again, a little back to back, I'm sorry, but you had a perfect segue for me.
Yeah, no. So some of the things is, you know, they always listen. Like they're willing to listen to you regardless of, you know, how dumb your idea might be, or you might think it's dumb and it's like they're willing to listen to you and they always check in on you. And then also I don't know, just being comfortable with them, or having that comfort to, you know, explain things that don't feel right or things that you want to change, and, you know, having them understand that, especially since like a lot of people come from different background, different perspectives, and just having them open to that. But I'll stop bragging on my advisor and pass it on because my advisor is awesome, or both of them are awesome. I'm co-advised.
I'll go quickly. Yeah, I think like my current advisor and then like several of the ones I had in the past, like yeah, I feel like it's that's similar to what Deandra is saying, that they like actively are trying to listen and are willing to like, you know, brainstorm with you about things and like you that you feel comfortable around them. So all those same things. I also think like another thing that has been just like in general an indicator of well, like it for me a good experience with advisor or mentor is like how responsive they are. I know like life is crazy for all of us, and I know I'm not even like myself. I'm not always the best, but like you know like yeah, I don't feel like I'm ever in the lurch, like waiting for my advisor or like mentors to get back to me and to like, you know, hear me out on different problems. And I think that was really helpful in kind of like my search for an advisor for graduate school. So yeah, that's pretty short. I'm finding I'm like forgetting things to say, but everyone has so much to share. So I'll pass it on to the next.
I can go next because this question will be interesting to answer for me because I technically do not have an official advisological career. But I would say the one can you guys hear me okay? Did I cut out?
We're losing you a little bit, but I think that we're
Okay.
getting everything to some degree. So
Okay.
if you want to start
I'll
over just to
continue.
be sure.
Okay. So I technically do not have an advisor. I have a college advisor for what classes I need to take for my career, but for my ornithological career, I do not have an advisor. But I would say for my mentor, uh, Miss Buckland that I had for this fellowship, I worked alongside her and she taught me to band and to measure birds and record, as well as point counts. And I would say the number one quality that I appreciated from her the most is her overwhelming patience. I'm a man of a lot of questions. I ask a lot of questions because I'm an anxious person and I want to know the plan at all times. And she did her best to answer all of my questions, and um, I am very grateful for that. And also, she wasn't afraid to be nitpicky about my technique, which I appreciate. I think that's a quality of honesty that both advisor and student should have for a successful project. And I'm very grateful for being such an amazing mentor for my first banding opportunity. And yeah, I'll pass it on to someone else now before my internet gives out again.
Yeah, I can add. So I have a really, really wonderful advisor as well. I'm sure we all do. And I find that I am very similar to her in a lot of ways. So I really like a lot of transparency and, of course, echoing what everyone else has already said, especially willingness to listen, but also understand, and also willingness to learn. So, there have been times where my advisor has told me specifically, she's also learning and we're on this journey together. Very new type of research, I guess, for us. So I think that it has been the most significant thing, the most significant concept or characteristic in this collaboration or partnership between my advisor and I. And in my opinion, that's really what it should be, is more of a collaboration and a partnership than a supervisor and a student. And that's exactly how it feels. So I'm really lucky to say that as well.
Okay, I can go next. I think having like an approachable advisor is something you should definitely look for. For example, so me and my PI, like we already have like a weekly check-in meeting, but I probably walk in her office like 3 to 5 times a day with something new that I found. I think it's just because she was like, she just has an open door policy and she's always like willing to talk about like anything. Like if it's like some like new idea that I might have come up with like a paper from like 50 years ago that I found or whatever, I'll just go in her office and then we'll just nerd out about it for like 15 minutes. And then she's just super like, yeah, just like find somebody who's like super open to like all the crazy ideas that you might have because like those are like where the best projects come out of. So
Yeah, I'll wrap up. Obviously, I think what everyone else has said is super important. And the only thing I really have to add is also looking for someone who is willing to tailor their mentor style to you. So like treating you as an individual and thinking about the communication styles and um, you know, ways of mentoring that are specific to you. Um, I think is important, and not treating everybody, not necessarily treating everyone with the same approach. I think is important.
Amazing. Thank you all for sharing. My next question for you is, do you have any advice for any current or aspiring field researchers, particularly those from marginalized backgrounds, who want to make an impact in their fields? And I will get My-Lan to get us going.
Yeah. I think that like, well, I can't like speak for everyone. Obviously, I think that just like, like something that we've been talking about is a little bit is how it can be a bit intimidating being in a place where like doing research in a lot of these places where people don't outwardly appear similar to you. And that like uh it is what it is, like in the field, like learning about yourself, learning about others, like making that community connection and with however many technicians you're working with. Maybe it's just like one person, maybe it's just like the environment even around you can help you stay grounded, but also remembering that like our life is not like just our work either, or like the things that we do for money or for research, and that like it's still important to stay connected with you know people that can understand like all the different parts of yourself, like and like yeah, just like yeah, making sure that you're still cultivating like your support network and community in however many ways like are true to yourself, because you might be in a place where like the people that you're around might not like meet all of your like emotional or mental needs. And I'm sorry that's like a little bit vague, but if I think of something better, maybe I'll ask Reagan if I have something helpful to add. So I'll let someone else go ahead.
I can go. So I think it's not super common still to place your identity as like a theme throughout your research or projects. So really to be committed to the cause, that really requires strength, resiliency, tenacity. And so I think that needs to be thought about pretty carefully before diving into such a thing, because it can be mentally taxing, emotionally taxing work. Of course, it's very rewarding, but it still has its it can still come with its own challenges. So yeah, with that too, there's also, you'll likely encounter people that'll try to hinder your success or dim your light in some way. And specifically for graduate students or even undergrad students, finding an advisor that's a good fit for you has the greatest impact on your success, of course. But in general, I agree that encouraging anyone to find community, because that's what you will want, is a group of like-minded folks, kind of acting as a sounding board or a support system, whatever you might need through whatever you're going through, whether that's your research, personal experiences, anything in between. So I think those are the most important things to keep in mind for that.
If it would be okay for me to go next. But I would say one of the biggest advice would be is to be as proactive as you can in getting yourself into that field in the first place. A lot of struggles that I faced and finding opportunities to finally begin my career in ornithology is that I had no connections whatsoever to people who were doing work in this field or anyone else for that matter. I came from a very different field, biochemistry, and I know not everyone has access to college classes or, college campus clubs where they can meet these kinds of people. And I feel like that was one of the biggest barriers for marginalized people, is just accessing that information. Not a lot of research opportunities, sometimes you'll find research opportunities like posted onto bulletin boards or online, but you have to really do some deep digging to find work that is specific to what you want to be doing and, supports you adequately. I feel like that's just not talked enough of like how to break into this like bubble of ecology or a niche field that you want to participate in. I feel like if we had more education opportunities or like a central place, more ornithological societies or more public demonstrations to get people aware of opportunities like these, it could go a long way for helping niche fields like ornithology or ichthyology or entomology grow. So I'll pass that on to someone else.
Okay, I can go next. My biggest advice I would probably give is to just like look for as many mentors as possible. Like, yeah, like it is like very difficult to get into like these like niche fields or whatever. So it's probably best to just reach out to like as many people in those fields as you can, because like they can give you like advice on like the whole process, like getting into research, getting into grad school, things like that. Um, and then also like just like always like never give up on yourself either, because like things are going to be difficult and you may face challenges that like everyone else around you may not face. But if you always have faith and confidence in yourself, like you're going to succeed. So
I can go next. Um, I think those are all like great things that everybody has touched on. One thing that I always tell, especially when I'm giving a talk or just like to the youth, like Indigenous youth, is, it's just to really never underestimate the value of the perspective that you bring to the table, because it's your strength. And don't try to ever feel like you have to fit into like a specific mold to succeed, because I think that's one of the things I did growing up. It's like, you know, I wanted to be this person because everybody thought, you know, you're gonna be blah blah blah. But don't, you know, don't ever do that to yourself. Like the field, like any field, I feel like just really needs these diverse voices and experiences. So like don't be afraid to share, like, you know, where you come from, stories you have. But I always so tell them just to, I think was mentioned earlier, just look for opportunities just to collaborate with people like who generally respect your values and what you bring to the table, because you know that opens a lot of doors and opportunities that you can take and learn from.
Yeah, I guess I'll wrap up. I mean, some of what I have to say echoes with what like Cheyenne and Kiedon said about finding a community, finding a mentor. For a community for undergrads, that could be like the student chapter of the Wildlife Society, or the professional society that, you know, aligns with your field. For someone who might be more advanced in their career, like grad students or early career professionals, finding professional societies would help you find the community. And then I would wrap up with don't be afraid to ask for help. I know it can be really intimidating to, you know, admit that you don't know how to approach something, or you're just completely clueless. But don't be afraid to ask for help if you have things like questions about your career path, questions about majors, um, whatever the spectrum of question you have. Don't be too intimidated to ask for answers and for guidance.
Amazing. Thank you all. That was really great advice. So I think we have room for one or two more questions before we open it up to the audience, which now is a great time for the audience to put any questions you might have into the Q&A. But I would like to ask, what kind of legacy do you hope to leave with your work? What do you hope people will take away from the work you have done? Kind of a big question, but I will get Killian to get us started.
Lovely, thank you. So, I first and foremost, I want my work to be a stepping stone for someone else's success. I know it's kind of a lot to ask for to get famous off of your work, and that's not at all my life's goal. If anything, I would like to specialize in a certain species and get to know it throughout the course of my career. But I believe that science is all about building off of the works of others and collaborating to get to know the world around you. And that is exactly my goal for what I want to put out into the world. Um, it doesn't exactly take a genius to get famous off of anything, but it's a good reminder to me that biology and ecology are not fields that are as broad as some people might think. Like some species out there we know almost nothing about, whether their habitat, their behavior. There's still a lot to look at and study out there, and I most importantly just want my work to be applicable to someone else's research in the future. And I'll pass it on to someone else with that note.
I can go. um, so this is, I guess, a question I haven't really thought about, honestly. um, but I think for me, like growing up, or for maybe a lot of us, like growing up, I didn't see many people like me in the field that I am in. So just showing the youth, or like these indigenous youth, showing them that they can do it too. But I also hope that just like my journey, definitely makes it easier for the next generation just to follow their passion in like these fields of conservation and wildlife. Um, just, you know, I always think a lot of people that I see now that I'm like, oh, I read your paper. Oh, I I followed your protocols, and now I have this ability to do the kind of research that I want to do. I want to like, incorporate indigenous research methodologies into some of the stuff I want to do. And like 10, 20 years ago, that probably wasn't even out there. And like they're always saying you have to cite blah, blah, blah kind of thing. And there are people doing that now, and that's created that path for me to walk. So it's always that thing of, if I can open a door, I just hope it stays open for others to walk through it, especially like Indigenous youth. But yeah.
I can follow up with that, especially since Deandra kind of stole some words out of my mouth. But I'd like to add on to that as well, is that I really hope that my work can really help people in understanding the significance of emphasizing Indigenous science and Indigenous research methodologies in academic or institutional spaces, and really see the value in defining relational and land-backed frameworks in research in order to create these more equitable and beneficial outcomes for all Indigenous communities and peoples involved. And I guess with that too, in the short term, I really want to define these frameworks in my own work, but also transcending into the broader field of ecology and evolution. So that includes land-backed frameworks, Indigenous data sovereignty, and I think that's really important right now, especially since Indigenous science, Indigenous knowledge, and traditional ecological knowledge, these are all really hot topics right now in academia. And I think that seeing people like me and Deandra, for example, for our youth, that's really important. This work needs to be Indigenous led. It should be Indigenous led. That's the way it should have always been. And so I think that opening that door, like Deandra said, is going to be the way to hopefully ensure that that is the way it is for future generations.
Okay, I can go. So like yeah, I do some like pretty cool research for like fish brains and like using genomics and so many other like subfields. And it's like really awesome work, but I think I definitely want to be remembered more for being able to make opportunities for others. Like for example, like when I was in undergrad, like my advisor then, basically like he wasn't even technically a research professor. He was just a lecturer, but he was able to get together like a bunch of funding and help from other faculty to start like his own research lab with undergraduates, studying like work that he did like when he was in grad school. And he was like really, really like focused on like mentoring undergraduates and trying to make opportunities for like so many others. And then it's like so ironic that like I ended up following in like this in like the same like research field that he was in, and now like I'm in grad school now doing like so much cool stuff, and I can definitely like tie like a lot of my success like back to his mentorship, and so like now like I want to do a lot of work like that, getting like undergrads more involved in like fields like ecology and evolution, especially those from like underrepresented groups as well.
Yeah, I can follow up. So yeah, I think I think creating opportunities and passing that down to the next generations and future generations is really important. And I think spreading the message that wildlife or nature is for everyone, and then in turn, everyone can take action to support wildlife and nature, and have that really full circle connection, I think is important um, to protect the wildlife and environments that we love for future generations.
Yeah. I feel like so much of what people have said is like really resonant. I definitely am hoping that like for everyone that I work with or have, an influence or a hand in their experiences in the field or with research, or just like generally with conservation, that like I can help to continue building a community such that where fieldwork is like accessible and inclusive, but also that people have like accountability for things like safety and preparedness. And with my own work, I just also hope that more people can see the value of studying like rare or endemic species, even given their limited like distributions and scope, because I feel like that's also a bit of like a break between what is generally attractive for traditional academic research versus like government management strategies. So, you know, yeah, I think we need that more of that kind of research, and also a lot of positions specialized in working with such species, but maybe also like Cheyenne was mentioning, like the framework around managing uh science and land could be like really changed.
Amazing. Well, I'm gonna go ahead. I know that we have one question in the Q&A, so I'm gonna go ahead and field that one out. And then if we don't get any more questions, I do have a couple more up my sleeve. Fear not. But Miranda in the chat would like to hear more from Cheyenne about Indigenous data sovereignty. So if you wouldn't mind digging into that a little deeper, we'd love to know more.
Yeah, you get me on my soapbox about this. But yeah, so Indigenous data sovereignty, just I guess to define it, is the right to govern and ideally own like Indigenous data by like Indigenous communities or peoples to own their data, ideally. Historically, this data has been misused and abused in institutional, academic, government research, and it's really important to remember that academia actually was built not only to exclude us as Indigenous peoples, but also to exploit us. And so a pretty notable example of that actually is the Havasupai and Arizona State University case. I won't get into that, but I really encourage you to look into it yourself. So Indigenous data can be defined as any data that's collected by or from Indigenous peoples, either as individuals or as communities or collectives, and also data that's collected from Indigenous lands, the environment, ecosystems. So that's our more than human relationships or non-human kin. So Indigenous data sovereignty really needs to be upheld to ensure that harm is not only minimized, but avoided to Indigenous communities, and also to ensure benefit sharing for these communities as well. So I guess like defining this and creating data agreements between yourself, the university, whoever you're working with, and the Indigenous community, and also storing data on platforms in an accessible way to your Indigenous collaborators who are in that community, are important to like respecting and protecting our data. And this is just I guess like more of a baseline, because this again it can kind of be a soapbox situation, but this is definitely going to play a major theme in my own research. I've been training with the summer internship for Indigenous peoples in genomics, as well as the Native Biodata Consortium through Indigidata, on Indigenous data sovereignty and governance, especially like in the genomics world, especially in the genomics world in our non-human or more than human relations. So I really want to kind of expand that, not like obviously include that in my own research, but also expand that into the broader field of ecology and evolution. Again, I said it, but because traditional ecological knowledge is such a hot topic right now, it's, you know, these non-Indigenous people are really wanting to do work that involves traditional ecological knowledge or Indigenous science or Indigenous knowledge. And I think that, you know, it's a really important step in ensuring that we're protected, our data is protected as well. That's a good question. Thank you.
Amazing. Thanks for answering that, and thank you for asking, Miranda. Diane in the chat would like to know what people feel would be their biggest dream for what they want to accomplish professionally or their dream job. So I will go ahead and kick it off to Deandra to get that going.
Yeah, that's a really good question, and that's kind of something I ask myself even now because I'm like, the dream job I want is probably not out there. I'm gonna create it. I'm just kidding. But one thing I really hope to do, like especially in the academic world, is just continue to build that bridge between Western science and traditional knowledge, because like again, like I said, like a lot of this is especially if you're wanting to publish or if you're wanting to do the Western science kind of approach, is you have to have citations. You have to create that path for people like us or people after me to be able to walk down that path. And I think just again making it easier for those behind me, and I think yeah, just continue to build that bridge, because there's still a lot of barriers, and there's still a lot of just like this systematic barriers that just come up, and they're like, well, you can write a paper that talks about your struggles and how you got through it. It doesn't have to be like research, or it doesn't have to be like a methods and introduction. You can break those barriers down by creating a way to publish papers where it's just lived experience or traditional knowledge. I don't know, it's just I'm hoping to create to figure out ways we can navigate some of that, especially in like Western science. But yeah, I'll pass it on to the next person.
I can take up the mantle next, and thankfully, I do have an answer for this because I'm kind of already on the path to doing my dream job. Um, my dream job would be doing bird banding for a living. I just enjoy the practice of data collection, and I think point counts wouldn't hurt as well, but unfortunately those are most of the time seasonal jobs, and you need to take break to analyze the data that you collected. But like I mentioned before, I would really love to eventually choose a single species to focus on and be a specialist on. And it just fascinates me to, the kinds of people that, just choose a species and then chip away at the knowledge of how the species operates and as populations and individuals. But I would say that just for like my future aspirations, I would really love to band either vultures or woodpeckers. I just love those birds, and I'm very thankful again for this opportunity to just, at least get me into the first step towards, what would actually be my dream job. So this is a very great question. Thank you for letting us talk about that. But I guess I'll choose Kiedon for next response.
Thank you. So I mean, for my dream job, so at first, like, I definitely did not want to take on like a career in academia, but then like all of my professors from undergrad and my current PI and a lot of the professors at my current institution are definitely pushing me towards that route because I don't know, they just see like I guess like passions or potential there. Um, like I said at first, I really didn't want to go down that path, but like as I'm like progressing through like grad school or whatever, I'm starting to realize like I might do a pretty good job being like a research professor or something like that. Like I really do like being able to mentor like undergrads, and then also like other grad students will come from like other labs would come to me asking for help with stuff like with their projects and stuff going on. And then I do enjoy like writing research proposals and stuff like that. So I can definitely see myself becoming like the PI of like my own lab at like maybe a like really prestigious school or something like that. And then also I feel like I can like make like a lot of like impact that way as well. For example, like until probably like a couple of weeks ago, I have like never like met someone in my subfield who I can like really like identify with or like someone who looks like me. And then when I first had that experience, I was like, oh wow, like that kind of like inspired me to like go deeper into this field. And I kind of feel like if, like undergraduate students see like a PI that like they can really relate with, that'll make them more drawn to come into like that subfield.
I can go next. I think that I've noticed that like in my like a, tr a, attempt to stay like flexible, I don't often think of like the perfect or like the dream job because we have so many like different needs in our lives that need to be met and just like really super honestly, I think like even getting like a permanent job that has benefits that involves field work is kind of like a big ask. Like as I graduated from college in 2018, so like me and a lot of my similarly like kind of um I don't know, like peers in similar positions to myself are kind of just looking for stuff that's like actually like livable, like over for more than a few months at a time. I mean, there's, a lot of amazing things or like opportunities that and freedom with seasonal work, but I think reflecting on some of those needs, for myself, for other people that I meet, like who, for example, are starting to not be able to do as much field work because of any number of like conditions or like emerging like disability. I would like to be able to do a job that, doesn't like completely burn myself out where I can like still pursue things that I'm interested and invested in, like work that I believe in. That's like meaningfully either helping the community and the environment at the same time and able to have enough time and like like good health and support to like nurture like the other parts of my life as well, which again I know is kind of broad but something I've been thinking about. So yeah, and it would be really amazing to be able to teach a field class or workshop for that was accessible to like everyone. Like I really appreciated my college course field classes a lot, but I'm just realizing um how rare that kind of opportunity is for like the average person or person who maybe doesn't realize anything about this field, but it could be so formative for so many people, not just aspiring like biologists, ecologists.
I guess I'll go next. I I've thought about this a lot, and I think I've kind of been more open to other, things that I committed myself to when starting my PhD. I used to be abhorrently against going into academia, but I've had past experiences with past advisors that weren't all that great, and I think that's why I was really against it. But with the support I have right now from my advisor and the realization that, you know, to help increase representation of Indigenous peoples in academia and beyond, really, I think that that is one way to ensure that our people, especially in my field, have a safe space to explore, their research interests as well. So I'm more open to that. I'd really like to, excuse me, work for my own tribe as well. So if I can find a way to do both. But I think the most important thing, sorry, I think the most important thing for me really is continuing to engage in outreach, especially with like K through 12. That's been a part of my life for the past 5 years, and I really want to keep that going throughout my life. So I think, whether that's with my own tribe, which it has been, but also like I want that to be broader. So whatever that looks like in the future for me, I might not work with insects, and I think that's okay. I don't really know. I guess I have a few years to figure it out.
Cool. So my dream job would be to be a research wildlife biologist with a Forest Service research station. So right now I'm doing a postdoc with the Northern Research Station. So trying to work my way into that permanent position soon. And then ideally conducting applied research on wildlife responses to environmental change and management actions, so that we can inform policy and advance conservation plans for wildlife species.
Amazing. Thank you all for sharing. Thank you for the question. One more quick, thank you for hanging in there. One more quick question. Just some kind of final thoughts. If you have any that you would like to share, or if there's like one thing that you would like for people to know about your field or about your research, could be like a resource for people to look into or anything like that. But just if you have any final thoughts to wrap up this webinar. And I'll get Kiedon to go first. And Deandra, your cat is really cute.
Okay. Yeah. Also, I'll apologize if any of you guys heard my cat in the background because I had put him in the other room. But um, I don't know. Yeah, like I said before, like I do genomics work, like work with fish, studying like neurotranscriptomics and stuff like that. And then in a couple months, I'll be able to do like single cell RNA-seq, which I'm like really excited about. I don't know if there's anybody out there that's like interested in like genomics work with fish that involves like neuroscience and like behavioral ecology work. Like I'd love to collaborate, I guess.
I could go next if that's still the format that we're doing. But I wanted to first of all thank everyone who participated both on the panelist lists and in the QA and showed up today. It makes us very happy that people are willing to listen to some grad and undergrad students talk about their work. And I wanted to say that everyone on the panelist lists work sounded very interesting, and I wish all of you best of luck in your endeavors. And I would personally bother you about your careers because I'm very interested, but just yeah, I thank everyone for participating today, and those are pretty much my closing thoughts. I'm just very glad to be here and meet these wonderful people.
I think, yeah, thank you also, Killian, for like that. I definitely also appreciate like sharing the space with everyone and the audience here with us today. I just like, yeah, I think one of my thoughts is that I feel like something that has just made me so happy is just remembering to like stay open to different experiences and like what, and like, and ways to take care of yourself. I think that like, for me, like being able to look at other organisms outside of what I'm studying has helped, because yeah, of course there's that one side where like when you dive into things like you learn so much and it's very exciting, and you know you're working so hard, so that can be really gratifying, but you know that can also be exhausting, and then gets tied up into like, you know, like your sense of self-worth. And I've found like a lot of solace in being able to connect with other aspects of nature, or just other aspects of like being human that are not related to science, that help give me like the energy that I need to like still stay in this field for in the long term. And on that note, I think it's really fun to engage with also like laypersons in the field, not just like academics or professionals. Like you can learn so much from people everywhere. And like, you know, it's not, of course, like no community is perfect either, but I also really like iNaturalist a lot because it's not like, well, it's not social media. Like you will probably encounter folks on the citizen science database who may identify a lot of what you're looking at, or you can use it to see which kinds of users are seeing what all over the place. And resources like that are really like powerful, and have been like a great source of joy for me over the years. So yeah, those are my thoughts.
I can go. So I think for me, just some kind of closing thoughts too, and thank you to everybody here. It's great to see everybody in person, or well, not in person, but virtually. And I just want to say thank you to Field Inclusive for, just creating this space for us and, creating these opportunities for us to share our stories and just meet other people and learn about all of your cool projects that you guys are doing. But yeah, if anybody wants to know about like wildlife conservation, a lot of people call me a bear expert. I am not a bear expert. I just work with them. But also, I do want to say that just because you're like an emphasis in like wildlife conservation, at least for me, I'm doing a lot of social work too, and it involves working with the community a lot. So I'm doing like interviews and surveys as well. So if anybody, has any questions about that, I've been more welcome to help. The IRB or the Institutional Review Board is fun. So yeah. But other than that, it's just really great to meet everybody and just thank you guys all once again.
Yeah, I also want to echo like the fact that we have this space now and each other to share our experiences and our stories has been really special. And I really do appreciate that. I've been lucky enough to meet Deandra outside of this. And we've been getting along for the past few months, but it's really, really special to be in like such a small space and like all of these underrepresented identities. I mean, there's something to learn from everyone, whether it's science or not. And I think that this has been really a really good space to do that. So thank you to Field Inclusive for really providing that for each and every one of us.
Yeah, I'll just do a really quick ending. So I want to also thank Field Inclusive and encourage everybody to support them and attend their workshops.
Amazing. Thank you all. I'll go ahead and wrap us up. So on behalf of Field Inclusive, I would like to thank each of you, My-Lan, Kiedon, Killian, Hannah, Cheyenne, and Deandra. We really appreciate you joining us today, and we thank you for the work that you do. We're also inspired by you and your passion, and your drive is so clear in all of the answers that you gave me today. So I just really appreciate you all and for sharing your experiences and your knowledge with us today. Thank you to everybody that joined us today, our viewers. We'll continue these conversations as we further our initiatives and work when it comes to amplifying social field safety issues, as well as amplifying minorities in STEM. Please be sure to follow and interact with us on all of our social media channels, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter/X, and YouTube at the handle @FieldInclusive. And be sure to visit our website to learn more about our organization and ways that you as an individual or organization can support us. Now to announce our winner for today's giveaway. Congratulations to Zara Sayoun. Please be sure to check the email you registered for the webinar with to claim your prize. Very exciting, congratulations. Be sure to check out the rest of our virtual Field Inclusive Week events. Tomorrow at 1 p.m. is our Social Field Safety Workshop, 1 p.m. Eastern. It will be given by representatives from Field Inclusive. It's a fantastic workshop, highly recommend. We hope you'll come and learn about how to promote inclusiveness in the workplace and our natural environment. Registration is limited to 50 persons. When this webinar ends, you will be prompted to fill out a brief 5-question survey. Please consider offering your thoughts as this allows us to make future Field Inclusive Weeks better. In the event the survey doesn't appear, you can always email us. It's info@fieldinclusive.org. Thank you all again. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to our viewers. Really appreciate you all. I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great week. And thanks again. Bye, everyone.